Hello everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast. As part of the Squeal and Squark. This audio podcast as part of the Hannah Squad. This audio podcast as part of the Ship Mode unit, and this audio podcast as part of a ZtormLabostix production. So, as per the synopsis or the synopsis that gives an overview, and as part of the Squeal and Squawk audio podcast series under ZtormLabostix production, this audio podcast will go into delve into a response to the initial one of the initial questions and that is in relating to could you tell us about your background and your current role or your current works. um, so um, uh, so obviously through audio through ZtormLabostix Productions, there are various audio podcasts and audio podcast series that sort of delve into different sorts of scientific works. Some in around scientific works, and scientific works actually that link sort of generic elements of healthcare services, but also aligned to pathology or blood sciences. And so to give a particular response around this question, to just share with yourselves, with listeners and viewers, in around some of my some background. So, as a healthcare professional and someone involved and have been involved in the sciences for a little while, I have supported individuals, projects and teams within and teams within the National Health Service in the United Kingdom, the NHS in the United Kingdom, and I've been fortunate to sort of publish works, sort of seminal papers or publications in around different aspects of healthcare services, but again in line to blood sciences and pathology, and particularly in around my sort of my intrigue, which is in around hematology, elements, aspects in hematology, and also sort of in around immunobiology, and additionally in around aspects pertaining to pediatrics, pediatric nephrology, that is in around the specialty of children and young people that go through different kidney illnesses, and at the same time at the same time, the at the same time at the same time the sort of the publications, some of the publications have looked to join or have a link in around aspects of scientific practices or elements of scientific practices, but are also aligned to a sort of a link or an interlink between sort of around blood sciences, which is traditionally sort of where healthcare professionals that are sort of non-patient facing, non-patient facing healthcare professionals, and sort of interlinking sort of some aspects or elements of that, or elements of practices and around pathology and blood sciences, and in with certain pertinent and important topics aligned to public health. So the knowledge, so my knowledge or my background in around this, in around this sort of interlinking has been has surrounded biomedical sciences, but also again in line to sort of elements of public health, and where healthcare where publications or works have looked to link aspects that have informed the development of frameworks, initiatives, and also in line to in around some efforts in around where there have been sort of frameworks and initiatives that surround pediatrics and young people, and heightening or the sort of the pertinent topics, as per said, in addition to the evidence base surrounding, and primarily surrounding the works of on the work the works on behalf of global social media platforms, two social media platforms that include the renal patient support group, the RPSG, and the kidney disease and renal support group, or KDAS group for kids. The RPSG was a social media platform that was founded in around 2009, and a KDAS for Kids, or a social media platform that was founded in around 2014, and there have been works sort of retrospectively, that have been retrospectively, where the teams have co-developed different publications in around, again, certain important and pertinent topics, and where at the same time where evidence-based works have linked sort of where sort of their where some of the important topics that generally get sort of that generally get talked about in around adult healthcare services, are actually sort of where the two social media platforms have collaborated in such ways to actually offer a sort of important overviews in and through publications aligned to where pediatric and young people healthcare services could be bettered, or for example. So my work has gone from my work has been in more recent times in developing the evidence base around the two social media platforms, and ZtormLabostix Productions has come in and where the effort has come through sort of highlighting in around some of the main elements of different publications in different formats, and through where the audio podcast channel looks to highlight these pertinent topics through in such a way that listeners and viewers out there who have access to social media, for example, can check in and listen in on some of the pertinent topics, and also in a way to develop their own sort of efforts, picking up on sort of the most some of the important sort of messages that come through the audio podcasts that are done, and so that's been my sort of work for at least a little while, but dating back sort of more retrospectively, I had an intrigue in sciences, in around the sciences, as far back as as far back as my time in secondary school education, through secondary school education, in some years ago, and then at school, in secondary school, I didn't do very well, unfortunately. Even in the sciences, I didn't do very well, though the sciences, I enjoyed the sciences because it was intricate. I loved the in around. I love the intricacies and the analyses elements of the sciences, and that actually triggered me to actually sort of attain an intrigue in around the myriad of different aspects of the sciences quite early on. But it wasn't until my time when I went to college, sort of following my secondary school, following secondary school, and where I actually took where I took science a bit more seriously. So I studied chemistry, physics, and biology, and I did that. Initially, I did it. I did chemistry. Sorry, and initially I did chemistry and physics and biology quite in such a way where I had to sort of sort of and sort of in a way to catch up some of my sort of grades that I had in secondary school. So in college, I had the opportunity to kind of take a bit more of an intrigue into aspects of the sciences, and then I stayed in college for probably about a couple of years. I think it was 2 or 3 years. 2 or 3 years. So I was then advanced from where I had to so undertake some of my secondary school education again in college. But then in college, after that, I then advanced, and I was able to focus in on aspects of the science in more intricately. So I did my college years in around the science as well. And then in after that, I went and did I proceeded to do my my undergrad, which was in biomedical sciences and toxicology. And within my undergrad, I actually enjoyed the studies in around particularly in two main subjects, actually, in two main aspects, and that's toxicology and the toxicology element, which focused on sort of the intricacy around and around sort of the analysis of sort of around poisonous aspects of particular elements, etc. And then also a second sort of subject that I had an intrigue in around was actually immunology or immunobiology, and it was in my second year, in my mid second year undergrad, I developed a project looking at the importance of reduced immunosuppression immunosuppression therapy in and for children and young people, pediatrics, and going through solid organ transplantation, and particularly in around kidney transplantation, and focused in such a way that the written works back then or had focused on in around sort of the most up-to-date literature in around that theme of works. And I did very well. I was fortunate. I did very well in my undergrad, at least in my final year project. And that got me interested or intrigued in actually pursuing sort of more works in around developing academic writing early on. At that time, obviously, it was sort of trial and error with sort of some of the written works. But then I pursued sort of works in around where I was was fortunate to get an opportunity to work in an academic laboratory, and in my works I was working with a team that looked at sort of pathways in solid organ transplant rejection, and it was where the team had a focus in around immunobiology. So I developed my early writings and early works with that particular team at that time. I then actually went on to completing my portfolio as a trainee as a trainee scientist back then. Sorry, after that, sorry, during just after that time. Just after that time, and that was basically between it was in around and between probably around 2011 to 2012, and then um, um, I completed my trainee portfolio, and I call it a portfolio, in which you have to develop evidence in around different aspects in around a specialty of the sciences. And my work was primarily in hematology and transfusion, sciences back then. But then after that, I then I then did some I did what was referred to as a specialist a specialist specialist thesis or works, which was in around clinical chemistry, and it looked at a particular topic in clinical chemistry, and then and then after that, I developed works an element in around leadership and management in transfusion research, and that was work that linked elements of biochemistry and hematology. I then did some works developing sort of works sort of after that, and throughout my durations, and still and sort of currently, it has been a base of a link between sort of works that are self-directed science-based works, but also picking up on sort of where other researchers or investigators, where they publish work or have published works, is where after sort of going through literature, identifying gaps in where sort of there can be sort of disparities or inequalities, for example, and so picking up on aspects of those. I then actually and since the time actually from from completing my undergrad up until now, it had been a link between developing self-directed projects or thesis-bound type works, but also in around developing sort of novel projects, but additionally, sort of, and I suppose in responding to this particular question, I have there's been a basis where I've been mentoring and supervising students in around one or two different academic institutions, or where at least where one academic is in around one particular academic institution in the United Kingdom, but also where a second academic institution where they had students who wanted where they wanted experience or understanding of how to develop, works for peer review and publication. So I've been involved in developing students so they can develop works early on, or develop early works early on in around aspects of the sciences, and where they have opportunities early on to not only to develop manuscripts for peer review and publication, but also where they have the option, or they have a basis where, for example, if they find, for example, they don't have enough opportunities, for example, in laboratory settings, for example, then they have then at least that they the basis has been is developed to develop healthcare to develop students in such a way that they are collaborators, but also where they actually develop works in line to where they can potentially have their own portfolio of works in line to academia, thus where they potentially have better opportunities future in sort of prospectively. And there is a question in this series in around sort of looking at the next generation and how best to develop the next generation. But in as part of my works as a supervisor and a mentor, it has been to see that students have opportunities in such a way that if they don't have opportunities, for example, in laboratory settings, because of the competitive nature that it can be, that they have opportunities to develop written works, and actually at the same time have that sort of mental agility, that agility where they can question different aspects of healthcare and healthcare sciences, for example, and at the same time where they can develop their own works or develop their own sort of intrigue, so that they also have a sort of have a sort of that they also have opportunity to develop a sort of academic side, which historically is not really unfortunately encouraged as much as it should be in the sciences, but it is something that I've always sort of believed in. I've always thought that, for example, healthcare scientists or scientists generally from laboratory team from a laboratory side from the laboratory side of things, where they are at the forefront in context of particular practices in around particular in around aspects of laboratory investigations, for example, within pathology or blood sciences, in at least one way, but at the same time, because of the way that the way that the way that healthcare professionals are or are committed to ensuring best care for patients or healthcare service users. There's very little time that they actually have to develop sort of evidence-based works aligned to some of the more particular investigations that healthcare service users have through the specimens that come through the laboratory. So I've always believed in the fact that healthcare scientists or scientists that have that role in laboratory actually are those healthcare professionals that actually that at the same time develop the evidence base alongside their 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 works in around laboratory practices, in around and as part of their laboratory practices. But how it has been, unfortunately, for the profession, is that they don't often get a lot of time, and at the same time, it is normally sort of the higher grade healthcare professionals within laboratory practices or blood sciences that actually have the opportunities, if they have opportunities. And so by developing students and mentoring students early on, is then allowing them or giving them the opportunity to actually develop sort of works early on, so that it gives them the better chance or better opportunities early on in around their works, so that they can actually they actually sort of can progress with potentially with a portfolio that is part of their prowess. So that is what my work has been in more recent years. And I've enjoyed doing developing students. I enjoy the fact that they actually get opportunities to actually develop evidence-based practices, and enjoy the fact that they actually have they develop sort of novel works in unison with particular conditions or healthcare conditions, but also where they can refer to literature, and they actually and where students at different grades, sort of undergrad as well as early undergrad students as well as early postgrad students, where they actually where they have opportunities to work in such a way as as not just students, but as collaborators, and then actually getting an idea, getting ideas, and a way to understand how the peer review process, how the peer review and publication process works, to develop works for particular academic journals, or scientific journals. So my work has been in around that. So there will be there will be some there will be some references in around this audio podcast, and or at least in around the synopsis. So do check out the synopsis in around this audio podcast series, where you can actually where listeners and viewers can check out some other works that way. So that draws this audio podcast to a close in around this audio podcast series, this audio podcast as part of the Squeal and Squark. This audio podcast is part of the Hala squad. This audio podcast is part of the ship mode unit. This audio podcast as part of a ZtormLabostix production.